Okay, today we're going to work with rocks and surf. I'm starting the video, I'm starting this demo off with a block-in of that one big white wave. Uh, the blue color that I'm putting in right now is a mixture of Prussian blue and ultramarine blue. I'm going to put just a light medium wash of that mixture to put in the background ocean values. And then I'll go in with some darker values of the a Prussian blue mixture as we go further in the demo. So the way to approach the ocean waves and rocks is really focusing on value. So I'm just blocking in my midtones. I didn't start with a beginning sketch. I'm looking at a photo reference that I took when I was out at in Pacific Grove, Asilomar area. So I'm using an size 8 round brush, and I'm just lightly sketching in the block in with the brush. I'm just using a light wash. I always focus on the big shapes. So with your block in, right now I'm focusing on the big negative space of the ocean, which is around that big wave. So now I'm moving into the foreground. The ocean in front of the wave and the rocks has some nice deep green tones. Um, the mixture that I'm using there is uh, a mixture of Prussian blue and yellow ochre. Once again, I'm keeping those uh, values pretty light. I'm still working with a mid-tone block in and just putting the large shapes where they need to be. So now I'm working with the rock shapes, which are pretty angular. And I am using a mixture of Indian red with Prussian blue to put in that a deep red rock formation. And I'm still working with that size 8 round brush. When you're working with rocks, pay close attention to perspective. Uh, are you going to look at that 2-point perspective? How are the planes changing around the rocks? So pay close attention to the shadow side of the rock, the light side of the rock, and the three-dimensionality of that rock. As you work with your block in and the foreground waves, be careful to allow for white space. Um, the, the lighter areas of the wave, that feeling of fluid motion. Be careful not to allow too many of your shapes to mix together. Now there is a shadow beneath the rocks that goes into the deep green water. So I'm allowing some of the Indian red and Prussian mixture to mix in with the, the Prussian blue and the Indian red. I'm allowing those to mix together to give the illusion of the rocks reflected into the foreground of the ocean. I'm working in some warmer tones in the foreground That is a mixture of the yellow ochre with the Indian red. And right now I'm just picking up excess water. Okay, now I'm going into the background area of the ocean. That mid-tone has dried, and now I'm going in to put in another layer of blue tones. Here I'm using ultramarine blue, or a mixture of ultramarine blue and Prussian blue, a little bit of cobalt blue in some areas. I'm keeping the blues in the background cool, and that will help to give that atmospheric perspective of uh, receding depth in the background, lighter and cooler. And then as we go to the mid-ground area of the ocean, I'm going to get a little bit deeper. I'm going to add a little bit more of the Prussian blue and slowly add a little bit of the yellow ochre to that Prussian blue. And as we come to the mid-ground and then in the foreground, our hues are getting warmer with a little bit more green in the tones. Keep in mind that when your blue values are light, they are going to be cooler and that space will recede. And as your blues are more saturated, they will have a tendency to come forward and feel a little bit warmer. So whenever you add white to a blue, it actually gets cooler. The hue is a cooler tone. So when you experiment with your blues in the ocean, pay close attention to the amount of paper that's reflected through. That's going to give you a cooler tone and send that horizon line to the back. And then as you add saturation to the waves, and that's what I'm doing here with the Prussian blue, the waves will come forward. And right now I'm just trying to keep the values soft around the waves. I'm trying to keep that the mist from that wave, just trying to keep it soft, the areas around the foam. I'm just going back into that wave, that ocean area behind the wave with some deeper hues, trying to create more depth. This is at the point that you're blending different values and saturation of the variety of blues you've chosen from the background to the foreground to work on depth. So right now I'm working to create shadow areas in the wave. The wave is breaking over the rock and there's some shadow areas under the wave. So when we look at waves, they have form, and trying to render that form with value is what I'm doing right now with value and hue. So that violet color is a mixture of ultramarine blue and vermilion red. a very, very light tone, and I'm just going in with a very light tone underneath the break of the wave. So I'll leave the wave up above near the sky and the horizon line white, and I'll just work in some very soft values underneath the break of the wave. And so I'm just using the tip of my number 8 brush, and I'm just creating a soft blended edge right alongside the edge of the break of the wave and the ocean behind it. And once you look closely at the ocean and the waves breaking around the ocean, you're just really working with very soft value changes and very subtle warm and cool hue changes. And so that's what I'm doing right now, is just working in some very, very watered down mixtures of the ultramarine blue mixed with the vermilion red that's giving me a very soft violet. And just that soft shadow on the edge of the wave helps to uh, give that wave volume. So keep in mind, even though the wave is made up of just droplets of water, all those droplets of water will create a form when put together. So even the white of a wave has a shadow side and a light side. So when you're creating your waves breaking over the rocks, look for those shadows. When you're looking at the water, always look at the light side and the dark side. So now I've dropped the photo in. You can see the shadows underneath that wave. I'm just trying to go in with some very light values. So I'll put down a little bit of hue, and then I'll get some water from my water cup and add it to the hue to lighten it. And just push it around with the tip of the number 8 brush, keeping the shapes very organic and soft. Especially with the wave, you want to keep your shapes organic and soft. Trying to keep everything soft since we're working with water. Keep in mind, try to keep things soft and fluid and very slow value changes. And then you'll just keep layering one hue on top of another. And here I'm bringing in some water just to soften some of the edges of that wave. Keep in mind, you want to join your shadow areas uh, so that things are unified and they're not broken up. So I'm going in to work on unifying the break of the wave as it comes over the rock and spills into the ocean in front of the rock. So you want that wave to have a sense that it's part of the ocean, not separate from the ocean. So the ocean is made up of water, and the wave is made up of water, and the water in front of the rock it's all ocean, and we're just working with different values and different hues, and it's just changing form. So don't think of the wave as being separate from the ocean, but it's the form that the ocean is taking once it spills over the rocks. So you don't want to draw a wave that is separate from the ocean. You want it to feel like it's coming up and out of the ocean and just changing its form. Now I'm going into those rocks, the rock areas, and I'm going to give them a little bit more form, giving them some saturation. And this is a mixture of the Indian red with the yellow ochre. I'm going to allow those rocks to be a little bit more solid. Allow the shadow shapes within the rocks to be darker than the ocean itself. Being very careful not to lose the wave formation as I bring the base of, allow the base of the rock to peek out from the ocean. I don't want to change the shape of that wave. I'm keeping all that white area intact. So just sketching in that rock shape. Now I may not follow the photo exactly. At this point I want that rock formation to work with the painting. So if you're working from life or photo reference, when you get to this point of the painting, you want the aesthetics of the painting to work well. And sometimes things do not always translate from a photograph to a painting in the same way because the photograph gives you more information. Uh, so you can be a little bit more abstract and not include everything from the photo. So at this point, you're just going to compare shape and value, soft edges and hard edges, and always trying to just reinforce what you're trying to create, which is this wave breaking over the rocks. So I'm beginning to notice I just need to soften the edge of the wave and give it a sense that it's more fluid. I don't want it to be one large white shape, but rather this wave coming up from the ocean. So it's a sunny day. We've got sun up in the sky, so I'm going to add a little bit of yellow ochre into the edge of that wave, once again bringing in another hue. So if you look at all the different hues I have in that wave to give it form and depth, I've got the violet going into the shadow area, and I have the yellow ochre at the top of the wave where the sun is hitting it, and then I have that greenish ocean color to the left shadow area that is being reflected into the wave from the ocean beneath it. That Prussian blue mixture with the yellow ochre giving me that sea green. So there are areas of the wave where it's just picking up a reflection of the ocean. So you have a lot of reflective light bouncing around that wave, and that's what all those beads of water are doing in that wave. They're just reflecting back the environment. So you think of your wave as a mirror. It is just a whole lot of water droplets that are picking up color from the ocean, picking up color from the sky, and reflecting it back. And it will reflect back in a lighter tone. So that's all I'm doing. I'm going into that wave with a variety of very, very light values of a variety of different hues, from the green hue of the ocean, the blue of the sky, and yellow from the rocks, and yellow from the sun in the sky. If you find that a hue gets too saturated, as I have there, I'm just adding water to it to soften it. Here again, I'm just softening edges around that wave. So that side of the wave is reflecting the ocean, the deep green ocean that is in front of the rocks. Working on the whites in the wave reminds me of the white dress in the John Singer Sargent painting of the woman with the umbrella. That white dress was reflecting different hues from the environment, the blue of the sky, the violets, the environment around her. So that's what we're doing with that wave. Now I'm going into the foreground with the deep Prussian blue, yellow ochre mixture, where you have some deep greens, deep rich ocean tones for the foreground. Keeping in mind, if you have more contrast in the foreground, objects will come forward, and where it's lighter, objects will recede. Very careful to leave some of the white for the white caps of the waves and the reflection of light off the ocean. This is also a good opportunity to use your flat brush or your round brush to give that wave a shape to it. Give it the sense that it's water. I find that using the edge of the flat brush is very effective. So now I'm at the end of the painting where I'm just going in and putting in refinements, darkening some areas in order to make that edge of the wave stand out, to really be able to get the form. Get a nice contrast between the background ocean area and the wave breaking over the rocks. Now I'm considering how will I end the right end of my page, allowing that wave to just reduce itself in size, which will help to emphasize the larger, rounder portion of the wave. You can see how I can go in with a deeper or mid-tone value just to give the edge of that wave some form. So this very end of the painting process, I'm just going in and refining some shadow areas. This is a good time to decide what shadows you really want to pop. Here I really want that the shadow in that rock to stand out distinctly as a wet rock in the ocean. When you get this dark, you say that for the end of the painting, don't get this dark at the beginning. The goal is to start in your mid-tone range, leave your lights light, and then start to get dark. Put in your darkest darks at the end, because you're always building up your mid-tone values until the end, and then at the end you can just pop in those darks. And that's really at the point when the whole painting begins to come together. But you really need to build up those mid-tone ranges. Just working on the shadow side of the rock underneath. Then I'm going in with the middle of the rock, and I'm using an Indian red. And now I'm going over that Indian red with yellow ochre. And this is giving me the form of the rock as the waves are cutting across. I'm going to just soften the wave as it breaks across the rocks, just to give a sense. You don't want a hard edge there. Just softening edges.